This is a true story. In fact, any of you who are fans of space games may have heard about the person it happened to, but you have not heard the full story, and I am withholding his name since he never gave me permission to tell the story, so he can always just deny it and nobody can prove he is lying. A friend of mine is a computer programmer. A few years ago, he decides that he can do a better job designing a space game than anyone else ever has, so he got to work doing just that. He came up with an idea for a game where all of the content is generated randomly, based on code constraints written into the engine and a pseudo-random seed variable. To the non-programmers in the room, normally, to create a game, you have to build a 3D engine, or use an open source or licensed engine created by others, then create all the things that go into the game: characters, vehicles, planets, stars, moons. Instead of all of that, he created the engine, then taught it to take random information and turn it into all of those things. It is called procedural content generation, and the idea is not new. It's used in tons of games, but normally, it's procedural content mixed with created content, or created content distributed procedurally. Not this time. Everything in this game is built by math and code. Everything. Space stations, spaceships, and even alien races, each with distinct cultural predilections and all. One might be a hostile warrior race. One might be a friendly, trade-based species. The point was, the game creates the races by randomly choosing attribute levels. The AI for the aliens was based on these attributes, such as aggression, curiosity, intelligence, etc. And they were all procedurally generated. You could discover, make contact with, do business and trade, invade, kill them all, whatever you wanted. Each was totally different from the next, but all were based on the same code. It's a very economical and cool way to create more content than any game should be able to hold. I even asked him after the first alpha release how he got so many different forms of AI at such a high level of sophistication, and he rattled off something about natural selection that was way over my head. He said that they evolve. Soon, the NPCs started acting strangely. The platform crashed one night while he was in combat with a few of them. When he started it back up, he walked back to the location and found the NPCs he had been fighting just sitting there in space. When he ran a radiometric analysis, it appeared they were running intense scans of the exact spot where he had been when the game crashed. Others had gathered to join the search. One was a new kind of vessel we'd never seen before. A tactical analysis showed it was equipped with high-quality sensors and was classified as a science vessel. He shrugged it off as a ghost in the machine and kept working. He would perform upgrades to the item manufacturing engine about once a week. When he did, it often ended up producing higher quality items from the same materials, and many of the items that were already created and being bought and sold on alien markets were suddenly obsolete. One week, he went to make the changes, and he noticed that several NPCs had sold all their assets at discount prices the day before. He again shrugged it off as a coincidence and began the upgrade. The following week, he went to do the upgrade, and the same NPCs had managed to short sell a large quantity of high-quality items that were about to be made obsolete. The NPCs had started to notice the changes he was making in the game and anticipate them. Now, in the world of video games, AI is a misnomer. It is not really AI. If real AI was as smart as you or me, these AI were about as smart as ants. They know just enough to suck up one video game and do nothing else. The idea that they can identify and anticipate trends in human behavior is like an insect successfully guessing where you will eat dinner in a week. It is, quite simply, far beyond their capabilities, yet it seemed to be happening. It wasn't over. Soon, alien races started working together, more than just the cooperative ones. For the first time in the game, naturally hostile aliens started working in parallel with friendly ones, and almost overnight, all of them became hostile to him They worked together to amass large fleets of sophisticated warships and track him through space, trying to kill him. He ended up having to make his ship invulnerable while testing the game, because every time he would log in, they would find him as quickly as they could and attack him. Once he made himself invulnerable, they stopped attacking him, but they continued to watch every move he made. About a month later, he'd made changes to the combat system, and to test it, he made his ship vulnerable again, with the expectation they would attack him. They didn't. He attacked them. They did not retaliate. He called me up to log in to test the changes instead. As I was playing with him, we were chasing each other through an asteroid field in fast-moving frigates. I had a good idea where he was, down to about 180-kilometer radius, so I was looking at each rock individually, as the old movie trope of a ship hiding behind an asteroid is actually a pretty good strategy in this game. While looking, I would take pot shots at asteroids here and there, and write little messages on them with my blasters, like, "I will find you," and I drew a dick on one of them for shits and giggles. Anyway, I found him and chased him out, hot on his tail, and when we got to the edge of the asteroid field, there was a massive alien fleet that had been sitting there, watching the entire time. He told me to ignore them, and that he was working on keeping them from following players around, but he could not find anything in the code that was making them do it. All I heard was, ignore them, and I said, okay, and opened fire on them. The moment I did, they all aggroed on me and killed me instantly. We were both laughing pretty hard, and I did not think anything of it at the time. 2 days later, he called me on Skype and told me to log in and warp to his location. I did. He told me to take a close look at the alien space station that had just been constructed in orbit of the planet where he was at. When I did not understand at first the significance of what I was looking at. The space station had, written on it, in my handwriting, if you can call it that, "I will find you," and a picture of the dick. I said, "Why did you put that on a space station?" And I will never forget the haunted tone in his voice when he said, "I didn't." Incidents like this continued. We both started scrawling little messages on moons and asteroids when the aliens were around, and he would see them pop up in later alien ships and structures. There is a planet in the game where the NPCs have built cities in the shape of random letters and numbers, and one with the phrase, "All praise be to," his name, which he had scrawled on the moon as a joke. But when he saw it the first time, scrawled on a massive planet with structures, a giant monument to him as the god of this universe, he suddenly did not find it funny anymore. In the process of doing research, my friend came across an article about a scientific idea called simulation theory, which states that any universe capable of giving rise to intelligent life, e.g. ours, will necessarily do so many times over. Each intelligent life form will end up making simulations, e.g. video games, and as such, as their simulations grow in complexity, they can become indistinguishable from reality, e.g. the Matrix. Now, because there is at least one universe capable of this, ours, by the mediocrity principle, there must be many, and if each has many forms of intelligent life capable of creating simulated universes, then the number of simulated universes must be infinitely higher than the number of real universes, if there even is such a thing. Therefore, the simulation theory is really the theory that it is infinitely more probable that we live in a simulated universe than it is that we live in a real one. My friend became fascinated with the idea and could not help but notice the similarities to what he was doing. All of those creatures inside were incapable of imagining their true place in the universe, but they were perfectly capable of being curious about it. He reasoned that even a simulation designed to be far more realistic would contain creatures that were completely oblivious to the fact that they were just code in a text file somewhere. But if confronted with evidence that the world is not as they see it, they either become fascinated or terrified. The idea that he could be an NPC in a video game on some computer mainframe somewhere got to him. It consumed his days and nights. He could no longer focus on his work. and he ended up having a nervous breakdown and abandoning the project, but not before he backed everything up to as many redundant servers as he could find. When I asked him why, he said, in case anything happens to them. He's still in there. He spends all his time there now. I guess if I were the god of an entire universe, I would probably spend all of my time there too. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. Be May in summer 2019. Some friends of mine want to go camping in the Uintas. Friend of mine, who I will call Ethan, says he knows a good spot pretty close to parking. Something like a quarter mile from the parking to the camping spot. Me and my other friend, who I will call Pete, pack a ton of shit, since we figure it's going to be an easy walk. Get to camping area. Turns out the parking area is about 1.5 miles from the campsite, so we decide we're going to make multiple trips to make things easier on ourselves, since we have got nothing but time. Map is a general sketch of the area we were in, a river and some ponds on one side, with a birch grove on the far bank, and then a small pond and a lot of forested area on the other side. We make it to the campsite and start setting up our stuff. Pete and Ethan decide to just set the tent on the ground, but not actually set it up. I warn them that it is supposed to rain and we should probably set it up all the way, but they insist it will be fine. Start hiking back down to cars. About halfway there, it starts to drizzle. Pete and Ethan decide to keep going, so I follow them. About 3/4 of the way to the car, Ethan hits me on the shoulder and points across the ponds to the birch grove and says, "Do you see that?" Look at where he is pointing and see something very tall, very skinny, with skin as pale as the birch bark around it, standing slightly to the side of a tree. Its head is topped by what I can only describe as pale white antlers or branches. We tell Pete about it, but he cannot see it. It's weird, but we decide it can't be anything too strange, because Pete is completely oblivious to it. Make it to the car, grab some of our stuff, and start the trip back. About halfway back, Pete stops dead in his tracks and says, "Holy fuck, wait, is that the thing you guys were talking about?" and points. See the same creature as before, this time a bit closer to the shore of the pond, but still standing in the grove of birches. Still a little freaked out, but we all took paid time off for this camping trip and do not want to miss out. Plus, I have a 9mm handgun, and Pete and Ethan both have big ass knives, so we figure we will be alright. Make a few more trips to the car and back, see the creature every time, moving between trees in the birch grove. Finally set up camp. Tent is completely waterlogged. Tell Pete and Ethan I told you so. Start cooking the food we brought and drinking. Eventually, just forget about the creepy figure and get into the mood. Once midnight hits, we decide to turn in. There is a bit of a dry area in the corner of our big 12-man tent, so we crowd ourselves into it. My hand is in a puddle of water the whole time, so I have trouble sleeping. Ethan and Pete are hammered and fall asleep right away. I always have a hard time falling asleep, so I am up for a while. Around 1 a.m., I start to hear what sounds like deer walking near our camp. We are in the middle of the mountains in Utah, so it's not that strange to see deer, elk, or even moose. Ignore it and try to fall asleep. As time goes on, it gets louder and louder, and I hear more and more footsteps. Pete and Ethan are still out cold. About 20 minutes after I first hear it, it sounds like there is a stampede of deer outside. Say fuck it, grab my gun, and hop out of the tent. The second my feet hit the ground outside, the footsteps stop. Scan the camp and nearby trees, don't see anything, so I sat down next to the embers of the campfire and take another drink of whatever Pete had left out by the fire. Get back in the tent and eventually manage to fall asleep. The next day, tell Pete and Ethan about the footsteps. They are a little spooked, but we have some more friends meeting us at the camp that day, so we decide to stay. When our bigger friend group gets there, we decide to go check out the grove of birches. We don't see anything that could have been mistaken for the creature. No fallen trees, no weird modern art, no homeless meth addicts standing on each other's shoulders. And these trees are tall, 12+ feet, and the creature, whatever it was as tall as the tallest trees in the grove. Freaked out, but whatever it was, it did not seem to want to harm us, so we stay another 3 nights and don't see or hear anything else weird. Anticlimactic, I know, but it was one of the weirdest experiences I have had, and there were 2 other people there to see it. I am not sure what to call it, except a Wendigo, but more in the sense of the modern internet meme, and not the northern native cannibal spirit. Be 13 years old, living in Mirandela, a small city in the north of Portugal. Starting my 9th grade, decent circle of friends, but nonetheless, a bit of a loner most of the time. Notice a new girl join the class. Cute brunette, also seemingly around my age, had a bit of a goth style to her. Not to the point of piercings and black nails, but almost always dressed in black. Get paired up with her for a project on the first week and end up chatting. Find out we have the same taste in music and movies, and inevitably become good friends. She was fatherless, moved into town with her mother recently. Ridiculously intelligent, far more than you would expect from anyone her age. Was even enthusiastic about philosophy and got me into reading Schopenhauer and Sartre at fucking 14. Was also a loner, did not hang out with many colleagues other than me, mainly because her long, existentialist reflections seemed to bore everyone else. Eventually became really close friends, almost platonic lovers. One day, she invites me to her house for dinner. Actually a little surprised by how long it took to get invited to her place, given how often she dropped by mine. That evening, we meet by the school and she leads the way. We start heading out of town. Half an hour later, we are walking around tall grass fields and dirt paths as night settles in. Can't help but feel a little scared, since I don't want to be out in complete darkness. She tells me not to worry and kindly holds my hand. After maybe another half hour, with almost total darkness setting in, we follow a dirt road into a forested area. Fear is really kicking in. About to beg her to go back, when she suddenly says we arrived. In front of us is an old, large, and degraded house, heavily obscured by darkness, but nonetheless being a striking sight. Not exactly a mansion, but still really large, with 3 floors and an old Alfa Romeo parked on the driveway. The door is unlocked. We walk in. She turns on the lights. The interior actually looks decent. Lots of old furniture, but all of it relatively well taken care of, unlike the torn up exterior implied. My fear turns into curiosity. Can't help but feel intrigued by the house and bombard her with questions about it. The best she can say is that her mother got it as heritage from a distant uncle a few years ago, and now only felt it would be fitting to move here. After showing me the bottom floor around, proudly displaying her collection of LPs and VHS in the living room. The 80s Philips VHS player was the closest to a modern apparatus in the entire house, and her packed up and thoroughly organized bookshelves in the office, she takes me to the dining room. Asks me to wait there while she goes upstairs to call her mother for dinner. As she leaves the room, I contemplate how silent the house is, the only audible sounds being the tremulous treetops in the surrounding woods exposed to the wind and the light hum of an electricity generator probably around the back. Somewhat confused by the whole situation, but far more intrigued by my friend and her mother's eccentric lifestyle than scared by it. In a moment, she comes back, tells me her mother is working in the attic and wants us to have dinner there. Now I'm really confused. What is her mother working on in the attic, and why can't she come down for dinner instead? She explains her mother is a dressmaker and uses the attic as her studio, and as such, spends the entire day there and does not want to interrupt her work to go downstairs. Unsatisfactory explanation, but alright. As we get to the upper floor, I notice it is in significantly poorer condition than the lower. The walls of the corridor as we pass by look slightly dirty, and much of the wooden floor covering seems to be torn off. She tells me not to mind that division, and explains her mother is still in the process of refurnishing the house. The attic stairs are at the end of the corridor. We climb them up. The attic is an ample but poorly lit space. I am assaulted by a labyrinth of dresses hung on washing lines spread across the attic. Most of them looked ripped and dirty, definitely unlike anything a dressmaker would be producing. A disgusting smell reeked across the room. I cannot even properly describe how unpleasant it was. She just calmly makes her way through all the clothes. I try to keep up while covering my face in disgust. "Hey Mom, here is the friend I told you about," I hear my friend say. Finally come out at the end of the mess. Regret doing so in the following second, as my brain processes what I am suddenly looking at. Right in front of me is a morbidly decaying corpse with almost more bone visible than the horrendous rotting flesh, sitting on a chair in front of a small table with a lit candle over it. I cannot even properly react to what the fuck is this goddamn thing. Now that we're all together, we can finally have dinner at last, my friend says, seemingly talking to the rotting cadaver before her. Nope the fuck out. Heart pounding faster than I ever did in my entire life, run through the labyrinth of dresses, and quickly head down the stairs, rush to the front door of the house as fast as I can. She starts screaming angrily at me. I have no idea of what the fuck she's saying, and I don't even take the time to listen to it. Smash through the front door, run away into the surrounding forest with no idea of where to go. The only thing I can make out of all her spontaneous screaming is an almost tear-jerked "don't leave me" as I rush into the woods. Run through the pitch-black forest for what seemed like torturous hours for my younger teenage brain. Cry until I'm out of tears to pour out. End up finding a highway. The first driver that passes by and notices me on the side of the road miraculously stops and gives me a ride back into town. Get back home. Parents are surprised to hear me arrive close to midnight, but immediately understand something happened as soon as they see me walk into the living room covered in sweat, with my clothes torn up from running through the middle of the woods. Tell them the shit I went through. Needless to say, they were skeptical about such an absurd sounding story, but nonetheless presumed that I was telling the truth. I must have been the victim of a prank from her, eventually involving a false corpse dummy or similar. Decide they are going to talk with our teachers to track down her parents and shed some light on her inappropriate attitude. They go to the school the next day to clear it up, far too damn scared to leave my house. And at the same time, I was terrified to be in my house, given she knew where I lived. Invited over the beefiest friend I had at the time, under the paranoia of her showing up. Parents came back, told me she was registered into school by her mother during early summer vacations. The school management was not able to contact the mother ever since. No phone calls were picked up, and, given no one understood where her address was located, all letters were returned to sender. Given how many problems the lack of contact with her mother was causing, they tried calling the girl to clear everything up on that exact moment, but she was missing that day, and so was she missing throughout the rest of the week, and so was she missing throughout the next week, and so was she missing throughout the rest of the month. Was invaded by a mist of self-concern and a legitimate concern for her. On one hand, my juvenile brain could not help but imagine she could be up to something. On the other hand, I was seriously worried about her and fearing for what could have happened to that poor, desperate lunatic. We tried filing a missing person report to the police, but we did not have her face, hardly knew anyone who spoke to her, and were not capable of reaching her mother. It eventually ended up being futile when we had nothing but her name to prove she even existed. She was never heard of again. It's been close to an entire decade since that happened, some years after I moved to the capital, Lisbon, but I still often go north to visit my family, And I still know that town like the palm of my hand. And I still have no idea where that damn house of terror is. Oh man, this Fred. Yes, good. B15. Get MSN for the first time. Adding friends from school. Get added by some kid I barely know. He talks to me sporadically about random anime shit. Only thing I know about him was that he's from a weird, Wiccan/hippie family. Every now and then, he would try to convince me to hang out, to experience spirituality. Fuck no. Remove him from context. In the next week, the school found out he was pissing in a jar in his locker. Also find tons of garbage in jars. Don't talk to him until senior year. He would continually try to get my phone number/address off of people. Try as hard as I can to avoid him. Last week of school, he is found smoking pot on the grounds. They search his locker. More fucking jars of bodily fluids. He also has black candles, black-handled daggers, etc. My friends start suggesting I don't go off alone after school. People saying the kid is talking weird shit about magic and creating his soulmate. Oh fuck no. Start getting phone calls from him, begging for me to date him. When I refuse, he goes off about how he's balanced the world just for us. Keeps talking about all the weird rituals he's been doing. Believes he's found the elixir of life in his piss. Hang up on him and proceed to tell a few close friends to watch him at the dance. They found him drinking his own piss in the coat room. Classic. Never heard anything of him after that, but he became infamous at my high school apparently. Needless to say, I do not regret avoiding him. I am pretty sure he was totally convinced that golden showers were the key to immortality. A man ahead of his time. Truly. Be me, 19 years old. Go to a family event. Typical family event with awkwardness and regulars. Regulars, unfortunately, include annoying aunts, stuck-up cousins, nerds, etc. Function is finally warming up. People actually enjoying themselves. Time to eat, and people crowd around table outside to get food. Sit on lawn chairs, not bad at all, and warm summer evening. Everyone is content and relaxed. Out of nowhere, hear a scream from inside the house. Everyone freezes. Instantly dead quiet as everyone drops a brick in their pants. Really good neighborhood where nothing happens. Everyone living there has good jobs. Expecting something bad, me, a few cousins, and an uncle rush into the house to see what's up. 5 minutes or so into search, doorbell rings. Cousins keep searching. I come down with uncle. Obviously hesitant to answer, but uncle does. Middle-aged lady neighbor sounds spooked and tells she heard a scream. Neighbor on her side comes over too and confirms it. 15-ish minutes now. Cousins come down and say they found nothing at all. By now, police have come and they have started to ask questions to everyone. Same as us, no answer. They leave in a really bad mood, apparently called for nothing. Everyone tries to chalk it up as a group hallucination, maybe caused by the heat, or a computer glitch. Aunt likes watching movies and computers, she may have left it on. People leave, quickly. They did not even want to stay and take food with them. Family members living there move to a house nearby. They don't talk about their old house whenever they are asked.